3 and B?
For 0 is bigger than t is, oh wait, is smaller than t is smaller than 5. It can be shown that h of t is bigger than 1. Find the value of t for 0 is smaller than t is smaller than 5, at which h has a critical point. Determine whether the critical point corresponds to relative minimum or relative maximum, or neither. Minimum or relative maximum of the depth of seawater at the location justified.
Is that fine? All right. So for part B, even though she didn't read the scenario, it's okay. All we need is the equation. Let's kind of talk about what's happening. There is a minimum or there's a maximum when the slope is what number? 0. If the slope is 0, then we have a maximum or a minimum, correct? Okay? And what I gave you is already the slope. And just because I don't want to go up and down, let's go ahead and write out the equation on here. So our equation on this one that was given was, we had dh over dt, this is a slope, 1 over 2, times h minus 1, times the cosine of t over 2. So since I already gave you the slope, we're going to set this equal to 0 basically. When I set this equal to 0, one thing that you have to note, they gave us, and I'm going to write since, h is greater than 1. That lets me know that h minus 1 is greater than 0. Is that true?
Yes.
So if I want to set, I can either set this equal to 0 or that equal to 0, but let's kind of think about it. It already says that's not going to be 0 no matter what. So we're not going to use that at all. Okay, so we're justifying that, hey, I know h of 1 is supposed to be set equal to 0. Then we find the relative extrema. But in this case, they gave us a condition, so therefore, we're not going to consider that at all. So all that we need to know is that dh over dt is equal to 0 when? Only when cosine of t over 2 is equal to 0. And I'm going to look at this visually, and this is a pre-cal concept. So when I go right here, and if I were to go up to pi over 2, we have our order pair at pi over 2 is at 0, 1. Do we agree on that? Which also means cosine, that's a cosine by the way, of pi over 2 is equal to 0. Is that true? So if that is true, my critical number is going to be, if I were to compare, I have cosine, I already have divided by 2, so t is replaced with what number? Pi. So that means when t is equal to pi, there is a critical point within the interval given from part B says 0 less than t less than 5. So let's make our sine graph. On my sine graph, here's my f prime, which is already our slope. Here's the function, and we have one critical point at pi. Again, I'm going to use my graph on here. So I'm plugging in pi into cosine of t over 2. Okay? So let's kind of look at what's happening. Would you agree cosine is left and right movement? Yeah?
Yes.
So we know cosine here is to the right, positive, yes? So if this is positive on the cosine movement, isn't that before pi over 2? So this before pi over 2 is positive. Are we okay with that? And then after pi over 2, would you agree that's on the left side? So that's going to be negative. So my graph is actually physically going up and physically going down, meaning this is a relative what?
Maximum.
Maximum. So then our phrasing is going to be, let's kind of copy the phrasing that they have. Okay, so we'll say there is a relative maximum on the interval. We should be very specific of this one. Okay, it's quite wordy, so I would have to just kind of summarize it. So let's write there is a what? Relative maximum at where? At t equals pi, because our slope, specifically dh over dt, changes what? It's not just changing sign, but what?
From positive to negative.
Good, from positive to negative. If you say changing sign, they can also interpret that as negative to positive. That's going to cause relative minimum, and you don't want that. Now let's see how the breakdown of the points are. So listing out why we did not test h minus 1 is equal to 0, and noticing cosine of t over 2 is equal to 0 is 1 point. So basically, noticing the condition of the slope being equal to 0. And then finding when the t value right here is going to give you another point. And they kind of like it when you not only mention this, also mention pi 3.14 is also within their interval. So always over-explain. Repeating is always good. And then our final explanation with specific wording will be 1 point. Are we good with this one?